Days from her spring wedding, Ellen Ray Greenberg woke that frosty January morning talking about floral arrangements. By sunset, she lay dead on her kitchen floor, more than 20 knife wounds. Police sealed the locked apartment off and, despite no defensive injuries or any forced entry sign, swiftly ruled it suicide. Yet bruises from weeks earlier, a smashed door latch that didn't add up, and a fiancé whose story shifted under scrutiny have left this case mired in mystery. What really happened to Ellen Ray Greenberg that night? And why has every official answer only deepened the questions? This is the tragic murder of Ellen Ray Greenberg. Around 30% of violent crimes worldwide remain unsolved. Statistics show this despite advances in technology, investigative methods, and the creation of vast DNA databases. Most cases are cracked quickly, typically, but some investigations drag on for years or even decades before the offender is brought to justice. The Ellen Ray Greenberg case, which we'll explore in this video, is notable because after many years of inquiry, it has seen very little progress. The investigation has been riddled with irregularities, raising more questions than answers over time. The brutal killing of this young woman remains a mystery with the investigation, strangely trying to suggest that the vibrant Ellen, who was eagerly planning her wedding, suddenly chose to end her own life. Ellen was born in New York in June 1993 to Santa and George Greenberg. She was their only child and was raised with love and care. Throughout high school, she was active in team sports and showed promise as a talented athlete. Ellen was a lively, energetic, and outgoing child who also excelled academically, especially in the humanities. After finishing high school, she enrolled at Pennsylvania State University and earned a degree in public relations. However, after starting her career in that field, Ellen realized it wasn't the path she wanted to follow. While working, she also enrolled in a distance learning program at a pedagogical institute. A few years later, she graduated with honors and moved to Philadelphia, where she took a job as a junior high school teacher at a local school. According to her family, Ellen's life was going very well. She was full of energy, had big dreams for the future, and truly loved her job and her young students. At the same time, Ellen was in a passionate relationship with a young man named Sam Goldberg, who came from a wealthy and well-known family in the city. Together, they had started planning their wedding. Sam's family was well established. His parents owned a large business, and his uncle was renowned as one of the top lawyers in the state. The couple met in 2009 at a party through mutual friends and immediately clicked. What started as a friendly connection quickly blossomed into a serious romantic relationship, and before long they decided to move in together. Just before 2011, Sam proposed to Ellen, presenting her with a stunning diamond ring as a New Year's gift. The couple then began preparing for their wedding set for the spring of that year. Both families were thrilled by the engagement, and it seemed nothing could stand in the way of the couple's happiness. Ellen threw herself into the joyful tasks of wedding planning, making guest lists, sending invitations, selecting the venue and decor, trying on dresses, crafting her perfect look, and organizing the honeymoon. Interestingly, Ellen took charge of nearly all these preparations herself, while Sam's involvement was noticeably minimal. However, loved ones didn't think much of this, and Ellen never expressed any dissatisfaction. It's true that certain unusual details only drew attention after the tragedy unfolded. In January 2011, the city was blanketed in heavy snow and biting cold. On the 26th, Ellen went to work at the school as usual. However, by late morning, a fierce wind and blizzard forced classes to be canceled, and both students and teachers were sent home. Ellen returned to the apartment she shared with Sam. Their home was in a quiet, cozy apartment complex in a peaceful part of the city. Sam came back shortly afterward. Some reports suggested the couple had an argument that day, a fact Sam initially admitted but later denied. Around 5 p.m., Sam left to go to the gym located within the same apartment complex. Sam was gone for less than an hour, but when he came back, he found the apartment door locked from the inside. He started by knocking loudly and persistently, then called out to Ellen by name, which caught the attention of nearby neighbors. He also called and messaged her on the phone, but there was no response. He even though the phone was clearly inside the apartment. After failing to get a response, Sam went downstairs to the building's security guard for help. He explained the situation and asked if the guard could open the front door. The guard refused, saying it wasn't within his authority and that he couldn't leave his post. Frustrated, Sam returned to his floor and decided to take matters into his own hands. He slammed his shoulder into the door, breaking the latch on the first try. Inside, it was eerily silent. Ellen didn't answer any calls. When he entered the kitchen, he was met with a horrifying sight. His fiancé was slumped on the floor, leaning against a cabinet door, her body slashed with a knife and her clothes soaked in blood. Sam immediately called emergency services and explained the situation. However, when they asked him to check if Ellen had a pulse, his behavior was unusual. He hesitated and asked repeatedly if it was really necessary. Then there was a silence on the line. Shortly after, Sam suddenly mentioned that a knife was sticking out of Ellen's chest, something he claimed he hadn't noticed before. He also said that Ellen was clearly already dead. When the police arrived, they were taken aback and said they had never encountered a case quite like this in their years of experience. The door was indeed locked from the inside with a latch, which Sam had broken down with his shoulder. There were no signs of forced entry or evidence of an intruder. Nothing had been stolen. Valuables and money were all untouched inside the apartment. Nothing had been disturbed or searched in the apartment. However, the real intrigue began during the examination of Ellen's body. Investigators found no signs of a struggle or any attempt by her to defend herself, suggesting that the attack happened suddenly and she had no chance to react. Her body bore around 24 stab wounds of varying depths, with the fatal blow striking her heart and causing her death. We will later revisit the glaring negligence shown in the handling of the crime scene and the examination of her body. This negligence led to crucial evidence being overlooked and allowed a potential perpetrator to remain free. Even more puzzling was the police's behavior. They prematurely assumed before any medical exam was conducted that Ellen had taken her own life. They cited her history of panic attacks, visits to a psychologist, and prescription medications as support for the suicide theory. Ellen had indeed been struggling with anxiety disorder and panic attacks for some time, to the extent that she sought professional psychological help. Ellen tried not to complain so as not to worry her family. In turn, her relatives attributed the changes in her behavior to the stress and excitement leading up to the wedding. However, the psychologist who treated Ellen prescribed her 2 medications to manage her anxiety, which she took regularly. According to the psychologist's later statements, neither medication alone or combined would have worsened Ellen's mental state or caused suicidal thoughts. The specialist also emphasized that despite her anxiety, Ellen never expressed any thoughts of wanting to die. Moreover, Ellen's friends and co-workers observed changes in her behavior after she and Sam began living together. Along with increased anxiety and restlessness, she almost stopped making decisions independently. In almost every situation, she said she needed to consult Sam first before giving any answer. Her parents also noticed these strange behaviors, but whenever Ellen tried to share her emotional struggles with them, she insisted that Sam was not the cause. 3 weeks before the tragedy, Ellen told her mother that she wanted to quit school, leave everything behind, and move back in with her parents. Her mother was shocked by this, but reassured her that she was always welcome to come home. Despite this, Ellen never mentioned the subject again. Later, it was speculated that after moving in together, Sam may have become violent toward Ellen, causing her to live in fear and preventing her from confiding in anyone. The psychologist Ellen saw neither confirmed nor denied this theory, but did note that Ellen struggled to express and explain what she was going through. It seemed like Ellen wanted to share something important, but was held back by fear. From the start, this unusual case raised many questions, yet frustratingly, no one made a real effort to answer them. The negligence during the crime scene and body examinations, as well as the forensic work, is shocking. Numerous important details, facts, and pieces of evidence were overlooked or lost forever. Without these crucial pieces of evidence, it was impossible to reconstruct a complete picture of what happened. For instance, there were no typical self-defense wounds on Ellen's hands. indicating she hadn't tried to fight back. However, her body showed multiple bruises that, based on their healing stage, appeared to have been inflicted several weeks earlier. Her fiancé claimed these were likely from playing team sports, but Ellen's parents insisted she hadn't been to gyms or sports fields for a long time due to her busy work schedule and wedding preparations. No suicide note was ever found. Ellen looked like the victim of a savage attack. Yet despite this, the theory that she had taken her own life was quickly suggested. Investigators pointed out that food, spices, and a cutting board were on the kitchen table, leading to the bizarre conclusion that Ellen had started preparing dinner, but suddenly changed her mind and decided to end her life by stabbing herself with a kitchen knife. As I mentioned earlier, the victim's body had about 24 stab wounds of varying depths, and forensic analysis revealed that 10 of these wounds were inflicted from behind. If Ellen was attacked from behind, and some of those injuries were severe enough, then even if they didn't kill her immediately, they would have almost certainly immobilized her, preventing any movement or resistance. It's simply impossible for someone to inflict such wounds on themselves and then plunge a knife deeply into their own heart. This led medical experts to question the initially declared cause of death. Yet, despite these findings, the investigation stuck to its original theory and refused to open a criminal case. The main argument for this stance was the lack of evidence of any intruders in the apartment and the absence of self-defense injuries. There were also doubts about how someone could have entered the apartment because of the unusual design of the door latch. The latch could be partially closed from the outside, but not fully locked. If it had been completely locked from the inside, it would have been impossible to break it open with a single shoulder strike without damaging the door frame. However, the pattern of damage suggested the latch was only partially closed, something that could have been done from outside the door. Although, in cases like this, the spouse or partner is usually the primary suspect. Sam was never considered a suspect and no charges were ever filed against him. On the day of the incident, he was interviewed at the police station accompanied by his uncle, who, as mentioned earlier, was a prominent and influential lawyer. The entire reconstruction of that day's events relied solely on Sam Goldberg's account, which at times was inconsistent, though he attributed this to stress. Neighbors only confirmed hearing someone knocking and shouting, presumably Sam trying to get into the apartment and calling for his fiancée, but nothing more. Sam also claimed during his testimony that he sought help from the security guard, who then accompanied him upstairs and witnessed him breaking down the door. However, the guard denied leaving his post or going upstairs. Surprisingly, the investigation never revisited this contradiction, dismissing it as unimportant. The only surveillance footage reviewed was from a single camera near the gym, showing Sam walking to the gym and then returning. Between those two moments captured on camera, Sam could have easily left through another exit and then returned the same way. However, no one verified his alibi, nor did the investigators seek out potential witnesses who could confirm or refute whether he was actually working out. Notably, Sam waited almost an hour after finding the door locked and his fiancée unresponsive before calling the police. The officer who took the call found Sam's behavior odd despite his screaming and wailing. The officer suspected his panic was fake, because Sam was calm enough to answer questions clearly and his voice didn't tremble. When asked to begin resuscitation, Sam hesitated, questioning if it was necessary, then quieted down and eventually mentioned a knife sticking out of Ellen's chest, something he claimed not to have noticed earlier. Interestingly, before calling the police, Sam contacted his parents and his uncle, who was a lawyer, and arrived at the apartment before the authorities. As previously mentioned, Sam also went to the police station with his uncle for questioning. The following day, he returned to the SEAL department with the same uncle to retrieve Ellen's personal belongings, taking 2 laptops, a phone, and a tablet. When the investigation finally decided to examine Ellen's devices a few days later, they discovered search queries related to voluntary death. The officers who first arrived at the scene conducted only a superficial examination and quickly concluded that Ellen had taken her own life. Even as new information emerged, they refused to reconsider their initial ruling. While the exact sequence of wounds couldn't be determined, it was clear the fatal blow was to the heart. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy found these findings suspicious and initiated his own deeper inquiry, sending a spinal cord sample to a specialist to assess whether it had been damaged. If the spinal cord had been injured, Ellen would have been paralyzed and incapable of stabbing herself in the heart. Yet, unexpectedly, the specialist reversed his stance and abandoned the investigation, claiming the spinal cord was intact. Though this report was never officially added to the case files, it also raised no alarms that despite Ellen's numerous severe wounds, there was surprisingly little blood at the scene, suggesting someone might have cleaned it up. However, nobody made any effort to investigate potential wiped-away evidence. The use of luminol, a chemical that reveals traces of blood, was completely overlooked during the investigation. The trash bins in the apartment were never checked either, so if any evidence was discarded there, it was lost forever. Ellen's grieving parents were informed of her death by the Goldberg family, who were the first to arrive at the scene. Since the Greenbergs lived several hundred miles away, they rushed to be with their daughter's belongings as soon as possible. Santa and George couldn't accept what had happened and firmly rejected the idea that Ellen would take her own life. Despite their heartbreak, the parents were never given a clear explanation of what happened that night. Only a brief conclusion and a refusal to open a criminal case. Determined to find the truth, the Greenbergs launched their own investigation with the help of independent experts. Soon after, a private detective reached out, offering his assistance free of charge because he wanted to unravel the mystery himself. After reviewing the case files, the detective concluded that Ellen's body had been moved after death. This theory was supported by the presence of a dried blood trail running from her nose toward her ear, which was inconsistent with the fact that she was found sitting. Blood couldn't have flowed that way unless she had been repositioned. He also discovered smeared stains on the floor that resembled drag marks. Additionally, during a second interview, the security guard recalled that Sam, who had come asking for help, was dressed in a tracksuit and claimed to have returned from the gym. Yet he was wearing boots and had no bag with a change of shoes. Despite this new evidence and witness statements, the Greenbergs were once again denied the opening of a criminal case or further investigation. They were even refused access to key case files, including the recording of Sam's call to the police and surveillance footage showing when he walked toward the gym and later returned. 4 years later, a new young officer joined the county's homicide unit as an assistant prosecutor. Having heard about this strange unsolved case during his university days, he decided to retrieve the archive materials to uncover the truth. He was particularly interested in the injury to the back of Ellen's head, which could indicate she was attacked unexpectedly from behind. Another point of interest was the note claiming no spinal cord injury had occurred, but no official documentation existed to confirm this. Despite multiple efforts, the assistant district attorney was unable to locate any report related to Ellen's spinal injuries. The document was reportedly lost somewhere in the archives, so the young officer officially requested a duplicate from the Center of Forensic Medical Examination. That's when it was revealed that no such conclusion had ever been issued, and the body had never been examined for spinal cord injuries. Miraculously, a fragment of Ellen's spine had been preserved and was available for re-examination. An independent expert was brought in and found that the spinal cord had been damaged in several places, making it impossible for Ellen to have inflicted the subsequent wounds on herself. These findings were submitted to the police, but after reviewing the new evidence, they once again declined to open a criminal investigation. Then, in 2018, the coroner officially ruled that all 20 wounds were self-inflicted without any doubt. With justice at another dead end, Ellen's devastated parents hired a new lawyer. Together, they gathered all documents, previously overlooked evidence, facts, and witness statements. In 2019, they filed a lawsuit against the coroner and forensic experts who had mishandled the case and effectively derailed the investigation. The following spring, the lawsuit was heard and settled, but the trials were postponed indefinitely due to the global pandemic. Although there was hope that the case would be reopened or reclassified, police and medical examiner negligence combined with the resulting confusion led to the loss of critical evidence that could never be recovered. Ellen's grieving parents even created a social media page to share updates on the investigation, posting official documents, new details, and theories. Family, friends, and colleagues all insist that Ellen could never have taken her own life, especially not in such a brutal manner. She was known to be squeamish around blood and had a very low pain tolerance, never even getting tattoos or piercings. In the summer of 2022, the case was dismissed again. However, the Greenbergs managed to have it transferred to the district attorney's office, where a new prosecutor took charge. The investigation was reopened 11 years after the tragic events. Yet to this day, the case remains unresolved. So, what happened to Sam? During the first year following the tragedy, Samuel made some attempts to maintain contact with his arranged in-laws. However, he refused to participate in any investigations they initiated and declined to cooperate with the police, showing little interest in the case. He consistently supported the official narrative that his fiancée had inflicted the fatal wounds on herself. Not long after, Goldberg found comfort in a new relationship and married another woman just a year later. The couple relocated to a different state and completely cut ties with the Greenberg family. Today, Sam and his wife are raising 2 children together, and he tries to keep any memories of his late ex-fiancée far from his mind.